Hi everyone! In the last week, we've learned what is harmony and how to write some basic harmonic progressions. And in this last module of this whole semester, we're going to learn some basic musical form and how to harmonize a melody. I personally really love this module because I think it's very practical and useful. So in this very first lesson of this module, let's learn what is phrase, period, and cadence, which are the most important three elements in terms of musical form.
Just like when you're speaking, there is sentence and period, and you also need to breath. In music, there is also something like sentence, which is called musical form. Let's learn from the smallest unit in terms of musical form, which is called phrase. So, in music theory, a phrase is the smallest unit of musical form. It is always contains a group of measures, usually two or four, or sometimes even eight. Phrase is the motif of a music piece and is combining to form period and larger sections. For example, two phrases can be combined to make a period. Of course, here we're not talking about any larger sections. We're just going to learn some phrase and period. So usually one period is consists of two phrases. So the conception of period is in music, period is like a sentence, and it is commonly 8 or 4 or sometimes even 16 in length and contains two phrases. Let's look at this example. This is a period. It contains 4 measures, so each 2 measure is a phrase. Usually, just like when you're speaking, you need to breathe. Between each phrase, you also need to breathe. So this is like a sentence, and then breath, another sentence, and combined to make a period. So usually when you are about to start to compose a piece, the first of all, you need to figure out what is the motif of this piece, which means what is the material that you are used for develop this whole piece. The first phrase is usually the motif of a whole piece, which means all the materials that you are used for develop the whole piece following this motif is usually just the material and elements from this motif, such as this texture is from the motif, from the first phrase. So it is used in all the rest part of this piece. And this is the melody, the motif melody. And after writing down this motif, then you can just develop by using the elements in this phrase, in this motif. Such as, for example, here is a dotted quarter note and 3 repetition eighth notes. Then here's a very obvious element that in this motif. So you may also want to write some more dotted quarter notes and some more repeated eighth note. So that is the meaning of motif. And that is really the function of the first phrase. Okay, after knowing what is phrase and 2 phrases are combined to make a period, let's learn about parallel period and contrast period, which are the 2 most common type of period. Okay, first of all, I want to tell you guys both the parallel period and contrast period contains 2 periods each. So if the beginning part of the 2 periods are the same or very similar to each other, then it's called parallel period. And if the beginning part of the 2 periods are different, then it's called contrast period. So let's look at this first example. This is the parallel period. This is period 1 and this is period 2. So look at the beginning part of this period. Exactly the same, right? And the rest part of those 2 periods are the different. So because the beginning part of those 2 periods are the same, that is why it is parallel period. Alright, this is a great piece in parallel period. Look at the first 8 measure, which is period 1, and then the following 8 measure, which has the completely same beginning part as the first 8 measure. Let's listen to it together. let's look at this contrast period. This is period 1 and this is period 2. Those two are completely different. The beginning part of those two are not same at all. So this is contrast period. Of course, if you also want to point out the phrase in those periods, this is the first phrase of the period 1, this is the second phrase of the period 1, and this is the phrase of period 2. This is another phrase in period 2. And also in this piece, this is one phrase, this is another phrase. So those two phrases combine to make the first period. And in the period 2, this is one phrase and this is another phrase. So both those two pieces contain 2 periods, or we can say 4 phrases. Okay, I want to show you a piece which is a contrast period. Look at the first 4 measures of this piece and then the following 4 measures. They're completely different. So this is a contrast period. Let's listen to it together. After learning the period and the phrase, then the next question is going to be, how do we write the period and phrase? Can I just pick a random note in the scale and start to write this piece and just end with a random note? So the answer is no. Conventionally, we start a piece or we start a period with tonic and finish this melody with cadence. What is tonic and what is cadence? So tonic harmony is just what we've learned from last week. It is based on scale degree first in any keys. So a period usually starts with one of the 3 notes in the tonic harmony. Look at this example. This is the tonic harmony in the C major, and it contains C, E, and G. Right? This is a tonic harmony that we've learned in the last week. You all are very familiar with that. So if you want to write a piece, the first note you need to pick from one of those 3 notes, which means you can either start from C or from E or from G rather than just a random note in the C major. Okay, then a period usually finish with cadence. What is cadence? Like when you're writing sentence in music, there is comma, there is period. You have to use kind of punctuations, right? So in music, musical phrase also finish with a form of punctuations. And these punctuations in music is called cadence. Maybe you're very confusing about what is cadence. So here's the answer. Let me introduce 2 most common types of cadence. Of course, there are a lot of types of cadence, but those are far more complicated than this class. So I'm gonna just introduce 2 most common types of cadence that you have to use to finish each phrase. First is called half cadence, and the second is called authentic cadence. First of all, I want to introduce the authentic cadence because this is easier to understand than the half cadence. So the authentic cadence is usually used at the end of the second period. So which means you need to use the authentic cadence at the end of your piece, because the most simple form of the piece only contains 2 periods. So that's why I write end of the second period. But you can also understand it as you need to use authentic cadence at the end of the whole piece. Either this piece is parallel period or contrast period. Either way, you need to use this authentic cadence. So authentic cadence means the harmony from dominant to tonic in any scales or any keys. So look at this example. This is period 1 and this is period 2. And also this measure is the end of the whole piece, right? So let's just look at this measure. Here is an authentic cadence because this is A major. This piece is in A major. So first of all, in order to help you guys to understand, let me write down all the notes in the A major. Okay, and this note is dominant, right? And of course, this is tonic. And let's write the dominant chord or dominant harmony. It is from E, G, B. So this dominant harmony contains those three notes. And look at here. This is B, right? And this is tonic. So the last two notes in this piece is from dominant to tonic. That is authentic cadence, which means you can choose either of the three notes from the dominant harmony and go to the tonic. Remember here's a very important point, that in the authentic cadence, the tonic just means tonic note, which is just A, rather than the tonic harmony, which contains three notes. So let's write it down. An authentic cadence is dominant to tonic. And in terms of this dominant, you can choose from either of the three notes in the dominant harmony. And this tonic is just tonic note rather than tonic chord. Alright, after knowing what is authentic cadence, then half cadence is used in the middle of the piece. So if a music piece contains two periods, then this half cadence is used at the end of the first period, in either parallel period or contrast period. Okay, a half cadence is just dominant, a dominant chord or dominant note. Look at here. This is a half cadence because this is the end, the last note of the first period, right? And remember that the dominant harmony in A minor is E, G, B. So this is B. This is from the dominant harmony. Thus, for the half cadence, you can also choose one note from those three notes in the dominant harmony.